You've maybe spotted it happening in your town. The familiar red sign is still there, but the lights are off. Another Leon has vanished. It's becoming a common sight across the UK. It's jarring because, for a long time, Leon was the chosen one for the health-conscious crowd. It was the brand that promised to save the people from the tyranny of greasy burgers and sad, prepackaged supermarket sandwiches. It was the healthy McDonald's, the place where you could get waffle fries without the guilt and a chicken wrap that actually tasted like real food. But today, the story is very different. We're watching a slow-motion car crash of shrinking estates, massive financial losses, and a brand identity crisis that's left customers confused and disappointed. So, what on earth happened? How did the darling of the British lunch break go from being a billion-pound idea to a distressed asset fighting for its life? First, we have to remember just how revolutionary Leon was when it started. Back in 2004, if you wanted fast food in the UK, your options were pretty grim. You had the greasy giants like McDonald's and KFC, and you had, well, that was about it. Then three men called Henry Dimbleby, John Vincent, and Allegra McEvedy stepped in. They arrived with a radical new manifesto called Naturally Fast Food. It was Mediterranean sunshine in a box. They had cookbooks that people actually bought and used, and they had a distinct interior design that felt very cool. They were serving quinoa pots before most people knew how to pronounce it, and they ditched the deep fryer for baking. For the office workers of London, Leon was a badge of honor. Carrying that brown paper bag back to your desk showed you care about your health, but you also had good taste. It was a foodie fairy tale, and for over a decade, it seemed like they couldn't put a foot wrong. They grew to over 80 locations, and the plan was total world domination. But as we know, when a business with a soul tries to scale up into a corporate machine, things often get messy. In 2021, the chain was acquired by EG Group. If that name doesn't ring a bell, their owners definitely will. The Issa brothers. These are the Blackburn-based billionaire moguls who built an empire on petrol station forecourts and later famously bought Asda. They bought Leon for a reported £100 million. But the fans were skeptical immediately. EG Group is a beast of efficiency. They run Starbucks franchises, KFCs, and Subways at roadside stops. They're the kings of fuel and go. There was a fear that they would treat Leon just like another unit to be copy-pasted next to a gas pump. And unfortunately, those fears were realized. The shift from a founder-led business to a conglomerate-owned asset changed the DNA of the company. The question changed from, what is the best food we can make, to how can we maximize the yield per square foot? Under the ownership of the Issa brothers, Leon made some aggressive moves that, in hindsight, look like a total misunderstanding of their own customer base. The biggest symbol of this confusion was the drive-through strategy. The Issas looked at Leon and thought, this works in London, so let's put it on the motorway. They opened a flagship drive-through in West Yorkshire, claiming it was the future of the brand. But let's stop and think about the logistics of this. Leon food is designed to be eaten with a fork, or at least with two hands and a bit of care. A love burger, or a Moroccan meatball box, isn't exactly optimized for eating with one hand on the steering wheel while doing 70 down the M62. The people who want a drive-through usually want a Big Mac or a bucket of chicken. They aren't necessarily looking for a halloumi wrap and a box of falafel. The drive-through experiment was a spectacular failure. Then came an even stranger gambit. There's an old saying in British retail, the Atlantic is a graveyard for UK businesses. Tesco failed to make the leap, Marks & Spencer failed, and yet Leon thought they could crack the code. They opened locations in Washington, D.C. and Virginia, trying to sell the healthy European lifestyle to Americans. But the US market is brutally competitive. You have Sweetgreen, Chipotle, and Carver, massive, well-funded chains that already tread similar ground to Leon, but with deeper pockets and better local knowledge. Leon didn't stand a chance. The expansion coincided with the pandemic, which obviously didn't help, but the issues were deeper than that. The brand didn't translate, the operations were expensive, and in 2024, they pulled the plug completely, closing all US locations to retreat back to the safety of Europe. It was a humiliating and incredibly expensive failure. Millions of pounds evaporated in the attempt to crack the American market, money that should have been spent saving the core business in Britain. Now, we need to look at the books, because the numbers show a fascinating contradiction. If you look at Leon's revenue in the last couple of years, it actually went up. They were bringing in more cash, but their losses were spiraling out of control. Leon expanded aggressively during the boom times, signing leases on prime real estate in city centers, train stations, and airports. These are the most expensive places on earth to rent a shop. When the pandemic hit and office culture changed forever, with people working from home, those locations became dead weight. This forced Leon into a CVA, or company voluntary arrangement. In plain English, this is a near bankruptcy maneuver. It allows a struggling company to tell its landlords, look, we can't pay the rent. Either you let us pay less, or we go bust and you get nothing. Through this process, Leon switched many of its leases to turnover-based rents, meaning they pay a percentage of what they earn rather than a fixed fee. It kept the lights on, but it signaled to the market that Leon was on life support. In 2023, the ownership shuffled again. EG Group sold most of its UK operations, including Leon, to Asda. Now, remember, the Issa brothers owned both, so this was largely moving money from one pocket to another, a debt management strategy. But for Leon, it meant becoming a sibling to a supermarket. This led to a strange dilution of the brand. We started seeing Leon ketchup and mayonnaise on the shelves of Asda. We saw frozen Leon waffle fries in the freezer aisle. Now, retail products are a great way to make money. Just ask Pizza Express or Nando's. But there is a danger. When you become a supermarket brand, you lose a bit of that premium allure. If I can buy a Leon meal for £4 in the frozen section, why would I pay £12 for it in a restaurant? This Asda-fication made the brand feel less special, less exclusive. And while the retail side might have been profitable, it couldn't prop up the failing restaurants. The brand was adrift, caught in the middle of a massive corporate debt restructuring with no clear captain at the wheel. But just as we were preparing to write the obituary for Leon, a plot twist came. In late 2025, the news broke that Asda is selling Leon back to John Vincent, the original co-founder. This is the Steve Jobs returning to Apple moment, or at least that's what the fans are hoping for. Vincent had stepped away when the business was sold, but seeing his creation struggle clearly struck a nerve. However, the reality of the buyback is gritty. Vincent's effectively performing emergency surgery on his own creation. Almost immediately after the deal was announced, reports surfaced that more jobs would be cut and more sites would potentially close. Vincent has been open about the fact that the business needs to get fit again. He is effectively amputating the infected limbs to save the patient. The focus is back on the food and back on the original mission. So here is where we stand. Leon is currently a smaller, bruised, and battered version of its former self. It's been through the ringer of corporate acquisitions, identity crises, and financial restructuring. It lost its way by trying to be everything to everyone, a drive-thru, a supermarket brand, a global empire, instead of being the one thing it was actually good at, a great place for a healthy lunch. But what do you reckon? Is the return of the original founder enough to bring the magic back? Or has the healthy fast food crown already been stolen by someone else? And be honest, when was the last time you actually enjoyed a meal there? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the high street chaos, give us a like, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next business breakdown. Cheers for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.